Welcome back to a family business podcast. Have you ever written a contract for your buyer client and felt that you haven't been as successful, or have you struggled throughout the process to feel control and that maybe potentially your buyer is controlling the transaction? We're going to walk through the entire buyer's process today on how to set yourself up for success, not only for you, but your client.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add to that same question, PT. Have you written a lot of offers for the same buyer and they haven't got the home?
Yeah, that's happened.
For you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, with the crazy market where you have to write a lot of offers to get it to go through. Yeah.
But not very often, though.
Not very often, but it's very situational based. And we'll start kind of at the beginning for us specifically in our buyer's consult. Our goal in that one-on-one meeting with our client is to, one, give a perspective on the market and share how other clients of ours has had success, and really explain, hey, we're going to try to get you the best deal possible and also have you protected as best as possible as well. But, in our specific current market, we're having multiple offer situations left and right still. So how do we be successful at that point with you being comfortable as well?
Yeah, I think that you just hit the nail on the head there, PT, because sometimes getting the best deal possible is just the fact that your buyer gets the home, right?
So that is the deal.
Some people, and I think that goes back to, as a buyer's agent, step one, right, before you're having buyer consults, is really understanding the market. Yeah. So if you don't have a bunch of buyers right now and you're not out writing a bunch of offers and you're not out showing a bunch of homes, then I suggest you find someone to shadow that's in your office and on your team, somebody that can mentor you, because if you don't understand the market, then there's no way that you can explain the market and what is needed to write a successful contract and win the home in an offer situation.
A multiple offer situation. Yeah.
Well, even just in an offer situation, if you write a crappy offer, I mean, as a seller's agent, I don't care what kind of market it is. If it's a half completed offer, they're not going to take it.
Well, and that's a great example of how you can lose a transaction is if there's multiple offers. Let's go back to that. And you have incomplete information on the contract. A lot of the times they're not going to call you back. They're just going to eliminate you that you didn't give them all the details.
As much as you don't think it too. I mean, that presentation of the offer is your first step and your first impression. We always talk about first impressions are so important, whether it's you're selling a house or presenting an offer to purchase a home. You are putting your best foot forward, making sure all the information is correct, making it as easy as possible for the listing agent and seller to review that offer. Whether that comes from the pre-approval and communicating with the lender to make sure that your pre-approval letter or proof of funds is up to date and has no issues with that. It all combines into one of presenting that offer to your best ability.
Yeah. So I think we should start. So let's just walk through this entire process here. So we talked about, so if you're a buyer's agent and you're not actively working with buyers and you're not actively out showing homes, which then I guess I don't know how you're a buyer's agent unless you're brand new. So we'll give you a little credit there. But again, get to know the market, understand what's happening in your market. Like we used to use this analogy during the COVID times when everything was so insanely crazy. Like, I mean, which we do have a good market now, but like when we'd have 20 offers on a property, right? We used to use the analogy of appraisers. Appraisers they're good, right? But during that market, the appraisers really didn't know the market. And the reason why is because they didn't understand that a home that they were using for an appraisal that was pending, that they usually looked at, that offer had maybe 20 offers on it and went for 50 to 100,000 over list, right? So they couldn't operate from a place of knowing what they're doing. But a lot of the smart appraisers would actually call agents and say, hey, I know but can you just tell me, did you have multiple offers? Did this go over list? Because they couldn't only disclose certain information. So that's smart. So as a buyer's agent, that's also smart, right? Like talk to the other agents in your office, talk to the other agents on your team, people that you respect, and just say, hey, what's going on when you're submitting offers? Are they multiple offers? Are they going over list? What areas are hotter than others? So that's step one, right? Step two then is obviously understanding what your value prop is to a buyer. So what is it that you are going to offer a buyer for services when they hire you as your buyer's agent?
Yeah. Yeah, totally true. One, I mean, if you've been in the business a long time is one experience that you've written a lot of offers and you know how to get them accepted. If you're newer, same thing. I mean, just make sure that you have all your I's dotted, all your T's crossed. So that way, when the offer comes in, I mean, there's probably nothing worse than a brand new agent that maybe the other agent hasn't heard of you in an incorrectly written offer. That's not going to help out your clients very much. One of the best things that you can do during a multiple offer situation, and this does not go about getting it accepted, this just goes about being a good agent, is that you have to work your buyer through the comps, everything else, and you have to tell them that, hey, I know you love this house, but I would not pay more than X amount for it. And there have been some that say, I don't care. Like, I want the house. That's fine. But your job is still not to get caught in the heat of the moment of it.
Well, that goes back to what your value proposition is, but is explaining to them that you do understand the market. And also, when you sit down with them to do that buyer's consultation, you explain to them that I am going to walk you through what's happening in our market, what I'm seeing with offers, so that when it comes time to make that offer, I can advise you the best to do that, right? So that's part of your value prop. And also PT, like you said at the beginning of this, and it's so true, really walking them through the different scenarios, right? Like before like when it's time to make an offer, that is not the time necessarily to be explaining the contract to your buyer. Mm-hmm. It's something you should have already went through in your initial buyer consultation, what the different contingencies are, what the different options are. And to your point, PT, reaching out to their lender, making sure that they have a pre-approval letter that's going to set them up for success. If it's someone that's buying cash, they've already talked to their financial advisor or their trust officer or whatever to get what they needed for proper documentation. I think those are very important things to communicate and explain, because that's when you want the questions to come up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Then, and not when you're writing the offer, when they're not listening to much of what you're saying at that point, that they want the house badly. So that you want to make sure that they understand the contract way before. I would agree with that.
Well, and I strongly advise too, especially newer agents, that, you've only gone through the process a couple of times. These buyer consultations and going through the process step by step with your clients is only going to better yourself too, right? And I love to emphasize this too, that if I have a first-time home buyer, anytime that there's some type of paperwork that they're going to be filling out, or there's a big part, whether it's a contingency or signing an offer or changing an amendment, either meet in person. If that's not a possibility, get on Zoom. I want them to see what I'm talking about. One, so there's no questions down the road and potential liability issues, but also I feel comfortable if they feel comfortable. It is our job to give our professional advice at the end of the day, but it is their decision finally. Yeah. So you have to understand that as well.
Yeah. Well, and you say all the time, Brad, like it's not a love letter, right? It's a purchase contract. So I think as a buyer's agent, you need to understand your purchase contract, right?
Oh,
so,
yeah, 100%.
I mean, and I laugh at you and PT, you're getting really good at this too. And I don't do it as often as these two do anymore. I mean, I definitely have done it numerous times, but like, I mean, I used to like sit with Brad. I mean, he didn't have to look at the contract and he basically knew it word for word, every single section, but that just comes from practice, right? Well, so when someone would email in or a message, or let's say we've sent over an offer and maybe it's somebody that, to PT's point, we've written 5, 6, 7, 8 offers with, so they understand the contract, right? But if they would message a question, Brad would usually not even have to reference the contract. He would just know exactly what that section meant, right? And how confident are you as a buyer if you're calling your agent and they don't have to say, hold on 1 minute,
let me check what you're talking about. Yeah.
Now, if you don't know what it means, then 100% you should say, sure, hold on 1 minute, let me pull the contract, right?
Well, and it's the more that you practice, the more that you review the contract, the more you role play with the contract. I mean, if you've got downtime, I mean, just go write offers. I mean, just do the practice and then double check yourself. And the more time that you practice those things, the more times you read over the contract, you're going to gain confidence, which is also going to gain confidence in your buyers and your ability to represent them the best.
Here's my advice, especially for newer agents, just going through this recently and trying to understand the contracts and so forth, is pick a property on the MLS, print out a purchase agreement, and fill it out yourself, and then ask the questions. That's the only way that you're going to learn faster. If you sit down and be like, oh goodness, I can't remember, just do it. and then you'll learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
I personally learn better from making mistakes, just because you don't want to make the mistakes over and over. So that's a great way to just start to learn. And then, print it out, read it, make comments on it. I know that in the beginning too, especially when the EBA first, it's always been out, but when it was put into law, I just made a little cheat sheet on my computer of different paragraphs. If there was something that I had trouble just memorizing or remembering what section each made, I just had it on my laptop, and they didn't see it, but I just glanced over and I saw, hey, okay, this is what paragraph this talks about, and so forth.
Yeah. I can't just stress enough what you just said, PT, because there's nothing worse than if you're a buyer's agent and, luckily I had Brad as my mentor when I first got in the business. So I would go to him with 50,000 million questions when I was going through the initial process of doing this. But like, there's nothing worse than like, if you're a newer agent and you didn't understand the contract, and then your buyer, to your point, PT, is liable for something, or better yet, there's a way you could have written the offer differently that would have secured the home that they really wanted, but you didn't know the contract or the addendums or the supplements that go with that well enough to make sure that you put them in the best position. So I definitely think, it's not the fun stuff, it's the boring stuff. Nobody wants to sit around and analyze the contract and analyze all the addendums that could go with it. But guess what? When you get that buyer, you have that person that if you've been working your sphere that trusts you and knows you, and they call you to help them buy a home and there's 5 offers on it, and you don't know the contract well enough to write an offer for them that's going to put them in the best possible light to hopefully get accepted, that's when you wish you would have worked on the boring stuff, right?
Well, we have to keep in mind too, these contracts are just attorney verbiage, and we have to be able to translate where our clients can understand. There are some people that will know what, specifically if they read line by line, what is that paragraph contains to, but we have to be able to reverberate that back to them and say, hey, the seller has to hold insurance on the property all the way until, closing day and so forth. So there's the little things like that where you just write your own sentences, make it, your own perspective of what is being presented to them.
Yep.
Yeah. And a big thing I think is how your inspection contingency reads. I think, every single market's different. We did just go through a contract change in our marketplace, but this is the one thing. And I just heard somebody in a completely different market than ours did a reel about this. And I just saw it come across my feed and I could not agree more. In this particular market, he was commenting how it's a market where literally they're having 20, 25 offers now, which we heard this from someone else. Well, I did. You weren't with me. I thought you were with me in Iowa City, but you weren't. We heard it from someone else who's trying to get their son a property in this market that I'm referring to. He said literally this is their 4th or 5th one. They have to go, it's like a $400,000 property and they have to go $100,000, $50,000 over list. They have to allow lease backs for 6 months and they're still not getting the property. Okay. But anyway, this particular realtor was talking in this market and he said, if you're writing an offer, there's zero reason why you are doing inspections with repairs. Zero, because if you're writing an offer, and again, every market's different, but in this particular market, which is similar to our market right now, he said there's no reason why you do that, because if yours a multiple offer situation, there's 9 out of 10 chance that the seller has a backup offer. One of the people that wrote the offer that didn't get the house is probably waiting there and just hoping that you do inspections and then you want repairs and then you don't get the house. Now, this agent did not advise people not to do inspections. Some people take that route. There are different ways as an agent you can work with your buyer if that is something that they're considering to try to limit the liability there. But he said you should 100%, this was his opinion, be writing offers with inspections, no repairs. Now, that doesn't mean that your buyer can't, or I guess it's inspections as is, I think, in his market.
Sure.
He says it doesn't mean your buyer, you can do whatever inspection you want to do, right? But you're telling the seller, hey, I'm not going to ask you to make any repairs, but that also gives your buyer still the ability to walk away. Now, if I'm a seller and I have 10 offers and I have somebody that has no inspections versus one that's as is, sure, I'm going to take the no inspections if everything else is equal, right? Yeah. But it's so true. Why would you even, I said this, I think I said it to you, didn't I, PT, on an offer we had last week? And we had like 10 offers on a property. I'm like, this is dumb. It doesn't matter. The client, you can do inspections if you want to. Just know that if you really want the house, and again, it sucks that you have to advise your client of this, but you have to say to your client, if you really want this home, in this particular situation where we have 10 offers, whatever the agent's telling you, if we have inspections, they're not going to fix anything anyway. So is there something glaring that you're really concerned about? Could we walk back through with an inspector or a contractor for something that you're maybe concerned about to make you at ease before you? But I mean, I hope it's something major that they're doing an inspection for, if they're going to lose the house over it, when they're willing to pay, I don't know, 50, 100,000 over list.
That's a good point too. And it's very hard with most buyers. I would say that I'm aligned 100% with you. It's the first time home buyers that I just have a major issue
100%.
that, you know, they don't have that out of pocket cash and they're already going to be probably over their budget. And so it's a very tough one, but you do have to still have that conversation with them that, hey, I would never tell you not to have an inspection. Is there anything that you're concerned about here that, you know, makes you a little bit nervous about the property? And if the answer is no, then I would say, once again, I'm not going to say not to have an inspection, but to give you the best odds of getting this house, you're probably going to have to waive inspections, which is so hard to tell a first-time home buyer. An inexperienced buyer that might have more out-of-pocket cash, they're probably more willing to make that risk.
Well, and again, we just want to stress, this is why it's so important to know your market.
Yes.
As a buyer's agent, you have to know your market, because maybe none of this is relevant.
Right.
Maybe you're not in a market. Maybe you're in a market where the buyer gets to control the situation, right? So it's important to do that. But I was just going to say, like, even us personally, when we bought the current house that we're in, people are like, because I just had this happen with a client that was writing an offer and wanted to know what I would do on inspections. And my response was basically what you just said is, hey, it's up to you, right? Are you okay if you lose the house over the fact that you wanted to have inspections? Is there anything that you were majorly concerned about? And then she said, well, did you do inspections on your house? And I said, actually, when we bought our house in the COVID, it was a for sale by owner. So it was a little bit different scenario. So there wasn't multiple offers because the person wasn't marketed properly. But we were concerned about the age of our windows. And then they had something on their disclosure about a basement, like a crack in the foundation. So we just literally had our contractor from our window guy come in and we knew our windows were older. We just wanted to make sure there was none that were immediately needing to be replaced. So we did that. And then we had the foundation. Both were fine. That's all we did, right? We weren't concerned about anything else, right?
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right. And we were in a little different spot than maybe where I would have been when I had not even met you yet, when I bought my very first house, right? I mean, there was a block foundation, there was a little bit of a bow in it. So I was a little nervous about that, had an inspector look at it, all was good. But I was in a different spot then than what we were in 2021.
Yeah, being versatile across different price ranges and situations is just going to benefit you down the road. I mean, you're going to know that gut reaction when you see something or you are in the house or home and you're just like, this scares me a little bit, right? An older home that you just don't know what is behind the walls, or you see something that raises a red flag in our lingo. So trust yourself. But, most likely if there is 10 offers being put on the table and it's a newer built home, it seems well maintained, that should make you feel a little bit better in your recommendation for potential winning situations.
Yeah. And also from that, let's say you get your offer accepted, right? And let's say you do have inspections. I think another thing as a buyer's agent that you should have had the conversation with up front is about inspectors, right? Do they have someone they know? How do they know them? Have they used them before? And I go back to this because I was listening to you, Brad, talk about your first house. So when I bought my first property and we were not married, I had a whole house inspection and the inspector missed a major item.
Like wood rot?
Like I was walking in my primary bedroom shortly after I purchased the home and I was moving in and my foot went through the floor next to my window. There was some issue with the flashing and the siding outside and that window was rotted and that was never caught. So, and I don't remember how I ended up with that inspector, but I didn't know him in the sense of knowing other people he had worked with. There's absolutely nothing wrong as a buyer's agent. If you don't have a couple inspectors that you trust, we have a 3 strikes you're out rule. So in other words, if we use an inspector or recommend them to a buyer and they miss things 3 times for 3 different buyers and they don't appropriately handle it or, address that and fix their mistake, they're gone. They're off our list. But I do think it's important that it's not just a friend of somebody or whatever.
Yeah, not all inspectors are created equal.
No, unfortunately they're not. Just like not all realtors, not all doctors, not all dentists. Yep. I mean, we all have different things, but I do think that's an important thing to make sure that it is. And I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I guess I never really thought about this, but if someone asked me who I would use as an inspector, I don't think there's anything wrong if, you have a couple clients that have used that inspector. If you ask their permission, that you put them in touch with that buyer, say, hey, why don't you call this person and see how they liked this inspector versus this inspector? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I totally think that's okay. And it's just all about looking out in the best interest of your clients. And one of the major things is getting your contracts right.
100%.
So once you get your contract accepted, once you're through inspections, this goes back to understanding your contract. Make sure that you understand the contingencies of the contract, the dates on the contract as a buyer's agent, because it really sucks if you're a buyer, you set them up for success, they got the offer, but then you miss a date on a contract or a contingency on a contract, and your buyer somehow loses the house. So home. So I think that's very important. Again, and goes back to, again, what we said. I mean, know your contract, know what you're doing, have people that you work with that you trust that also know what they're doing, know their craft.
We speak also about, being a professional and throughout the entire transaction for your buyer. But what also sets you up for success too is that if you run a smooth, clean transaction, that realtor is going to remember that. And they're going to remember that when you're in a multiple offer situation again. And they're like, oh, wait, Brad and Andrew, they were phenomenal in our last transaction. And they're going to provide that information to their seller that, hey, who the other agent on the other side is another item of the purchase agreement that a seller is going to be considering. So keep that in mind as well, is that, yes, our agency falls with our buyer client, but also a transaction, a ran transaction is going to benefit you down the road as well.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, PT, because we just had this conversation last week when I was in a different market with one of our other agent partners. And one of the agents we were meeting with was saying how she was so mad because she had been in a multiple offer situation, and the other agent that ended up getting the property was in her same office, right? So she knew what was going on, and she knew that this agent had went back to this particular agent and asked, hey, if you'll do X, Y, and Z, we'll take it, because that agent said they liked working with that agent better. And this agent was very upset about that, which I can understand. But on the flip side of that, and I don't work in that market, right? So I don't know how it is. But on the flip side of that, if a seller that listing agent is more comfortable working with one agent and the terms are the same, right? I mean, they have the right to advise 100%. Their seller of, we've done it. Like, we literally have had a multiple offer situation in the last 30 days where an agent that, and I quote, Brad's like, that agent is an absolute pain in the booty to work with. And we told our seller that, because guess what? If the seller took that offer and we had not communicated, and this wasn't just, it's not like we're just a personal thing. This is multiple transactions with this particular agent over multiple years that are always a disaster, always difficult. If we don't share that information with our seller and then it becomes difficult, don't you think as their trusted real estate advisor, they're going to be like, well, Brad, you've been in the market for how long? You've never worked with this person before. You didn't know this was going to happen.
Of course. Right. Yeah. And that's why your reputation is so important, right? And getting back to the contract thing, good agents write good contracts.
And I don't know if it's essentially that the other agent personally likes somebody. They know that they are not going to allow this to potentially blow up.
Yep.
Right. And they're going to find solutions. They're going to work as hard as possible to fairly represent their client, but also keep in mind reality too at the same point, because stuff gets out of reality a lot.
There's very, very few. I can count on less than one or less than the fingers on my hand of agents in our current marketplace that we know are super, super difficult. But at the end of the day, if that's the best offer for our seller, there's no personal bearing. There's agents that write good offers that I can't stand as people, unfortunately. Not a lot of them, but a few. But it doesn't matter. Going back to what you said, PT, my fiduciary responsibility is to my client. And that's who I'm going to look after in advising what offer they should take in a multiple offer situation. But likewise, it's no different with a lender. If you have a difficult lender, so that's another thing as a buyer's agent. Make sure you have good relationships. Yeah, you have good relationships with the lenders. Yep. You've talked to them. You know their processes. You've talked to other agents to know, do those lenders deals close? Because again, if you're writing an offer for a buyer and the pre-approval letter is from some lender that everybody in the marketplace knows they don't ever close deals, or they're super difficult, or they're the ones that give you the 4 days before closing, oh, we have a problem and we're going to have to delay closing. and you didn't advise your buyer that, and again, the buyer's probably not going to get the home if the listing agent is aware of that in the marketplace. But on the flip side of that, if it's an out-of-town lender, I know people love their out-of-town online lenders because they make it seem like it's just the best deal in the world, but it's not. We could give you a list of people that sit at closing tables waiting for
and even well-qualified buyers that just really thought this was going to be a lot easier. And just go talk to somebody.
Yeah, if you're, you should. But again, that goes back to just knowing, right?
Agree.
I mean, having the conversations, understanding the market, learning about different lenders, learning about all the things.
And it absolutely does make a difference who you use as the lender, not only for the closing, but when you write the offer too. It's.
How many times have we called? Like, there's times in a multiple offer situation that we've called the other buyers agents and said, like, "Hey, I see that they're approved with X, Y, and Z. Do you know why they chose that lender?" And half the time, the most of the time, usually the buyer's like, I don't know. That's just the letter that they provided. And we're asking the question because we know that they're horrible and they typically don't close deals. So again, how is your buyer's agent? How do you not know how they have that lender? Right. Have you not talked to that lender? Have you not made sure it's a good? I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Agree.
I think we've given a lot of tactical plays to run and improve your capabilities on the buyer's side to be a phenomenal buyer's agent to have success down the road. If you feel that you still don't have the right capabilities or you're struggling in some areas, just if you have an office or you have a mentor, reach out to them because they might not necessarily walk you through what you need to do, but they're going to give you, here's how I learned, whether it's printing out the contracts and writing notes and so forth, but just talk to somebody, ask questions because that's going to help. And also have people look over what you do too, just to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward.
Yeah. We stress this, you would much rather have someone look over your offer, that's your mentor, your coach, your team lead, whatever, to help you rather than after you presented it and you don't get it. And then you go to them and say, hey, can you look at this? Why would I not got it? And then you're like, geez,
that's
or digging you out of a hole that you can't get out of.
Exactly.
Oh, Lordy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I really think that's all great advice. Practice your contracts too. Not only practice, but pay attention when there's revisions. That I know a lot of agents, they don't do that. They just don't ever practice. They don't ever pay any attention to the revisions to the contract. It's all important. It's all being a professional, and it's important that you know the contract as well as you possibly can.
Yep. It's how you run your business.
Master your craft.
Yes. You got it.
All right. Peace.
Peace.